during my graduation, when I was walking to take my degree, I was not, I didn't know what I was going to do next. Like it was completely blank. Like I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do next? This is like, I was.
Today on Against the Current by Colors of Humans, we're joined by Shrey Mehta, an inspiring trailblazer in environmental science. From failing in his undergraduate to reaching the Ivy League at the University of Pennsylvania, Shrey shares how the art of coal mailing landed him a position at IISc. His journey through Wharton and experiences across France and the US. He reflects on how it all connects when you look back. Tune in for a story of resilience, opportunity, and perspective.
Hi Shrey, welcome to Colors of Humans. You're one of our, no, you are the first guest on our return.
Okay,
So,
thank you so much.
if I'm not wrong, you are in the environmental tech space. So, let's just start with how you got interested in this.
So, first of all, yeah, that's right. That I am still interested in the sustainability and the environmental tech space, and I had an interest of it since I was like a kid. I always like was always fond of nature, and I used to watch a lot of documentaries, and I used to see about the effects of global warming and climate change, like especially the documentaries of David Attenborough. Like I used to see polar bears like eating each other's kids, which was like really disturbing. So I thought that I should do something about it, and that's what inspired me to take action in this field. And yeah, I was always interested in the sciences as well. We both studied, I mean, in NAFL together, the pure sciences. So it all started from there, I guess.
Okay. So,
Hmm.
it was instilled in school out of curiosity, and then you moved on to do your engineering in RV in Bangalore. How was that for
Yes.
you? And how did that guide you or not guide you into what you wanted to be? Because sometimes people learn more from what they're doing that they don't like doing. So,
Yes. Yeah, so I think that's a very good question. I did my undergrad in RV in chemical engineering specifically. So before I started applying to for colleges, I was looking for masters in environmental engineering. But in India specifically, there are very few course options for that. Like there like just degrees related to environmental engineering don't exist. You have to do it through the civil engineering track, and it was just weird in India. Like there was no specific thing. Otherwise, you do an arts degree, which was an BA in environmental sciences, but that doesn't give you like a holistic approach. It just gives you a very surface approach. So that's what I've got the feedback from my friends who actually did that track. So then I thought, okay, I do like the pure sciences, and maybe I could like address a problem on industry or energy or any of those things. And that's what I thought, okay, how do I make industries more sustainable? And that's how I took the chemical engineering path. But while I was doing that path, I realized that chemical engineering is not a lot about chemistry and what I thought it would be. So, I mean, I did love a few subjects like pollution control engineering and water conservation and all those kind of subjects, which were like really intriguing and interesting. But the main core subjects like heat transfer, mass transfer, and all of those, they laid a strong foundation, but it was not something I would see myself do and get into the core industry. So I guess I can say that my chemical engineering laid a strong foundation for what I would want to do next, but it was not my true calling, if that makes sense.
yeah. So then you graduated from RV,
Yeah, yeah,
and if I'm not wrong, you had a earlier in RV, if I'm not wrong.
Yeah, yeah, it was crazy. My journey in RV was crazy. So before I joined RV, 1 year in advance, we like to book our tickets because you get it for cheap. And we booked our tickets to Norway during December, and my parents gave me a choice. Like, okay, do you want to take your final RV exams, or do you want to see the Northern Lights? I mean, the choice is quite obvious, right? It is a once in a lifetime opportunity. Like, I don't know how many times you'd get to see the Aurora Borealis or Northern Lights. So, my parents were pretty chill about it, and they're like, "It's a." I told that this might become a backlog or of like those things. So, my entire first semester subjects, all of them became arrears. It was crazy, so I had to retake them in summer, but it worked out better for me because I worked harder and my GPA like just increased a lot because I'd already studied for all of those subjects during normal classes and I just missed the final exam. So it was just like a revision for me. So my GPA improved. I mean, I did lose that particular summer. So, I mean, I did feel bad about that, but it's okay. I mean, it was worth it seeing the Northern Lights in Norway. Like I saw it on 3 different nights. And then we went on a snowmobile tour where we were chasing the lights. So it was all worth it. I have absolutely no regrets of, like missing my exams. And I'll tell you how it all made sense later too when we connect the dots because at the next I think the next semester I did study very well because these areas made me more serious, but I think that's when COVID hit. And I don't know whether your college did it, but my college, to calculate the marks of the fourth semester which was affected by COVID, they looked at the previous semester's marks. And luckily I performed very well in that semester because of these arrears, and like I was really proactive and I studied well. So again, it gave a really big boost to my GPA. On the contrary, like people who like were just who had passed and hadn't done like got good marks, they didn't perform that well, so it actually helped me. And then after that, I actually failed one of the subjects that it was called reaction engineering. It was again during the next wave of COVID, and the classes were online and the exams were offline. I'm pretty sure you know what happened in online classes and online exams. We never studied, and suddenly the exam became offline. So I was screwed. And I actually failed that, and that got me thinking, like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Like, I'd never failed an exam ever in life, even in NAFL, the unit tests and all that we had. I used to pass in all of those, so this was like a very eye-opening moment for me, and I thought to myself that, oh my God, like, what am I going to do now? This is not me. Like, the backlogs of the Norway trip were different, and this was a completely different feeling. And during that time was when the like placement season was going on, and RV and many other undergrad colleges in India have a rule that if you have active backlogs, you cannot sit for placements. So I was unable to sit for the placements too, even though I was like a very eligible candidate. Just because I had that one backlog, I couldn't sit for placements. So I saw all my friends around me, getting placed, going to these really nice consulting companies like Deloitte, ZS, and others like getting into HUL and all of that. So I felt really bad. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Then suddenly, after I
Yeah.
graduated,
So, I mean, it reminds me of that quote of Steve Jobs that you only see it when you look back and you connect the dots, but each dot is important. And like you said, the first dot was you having the backlog. Maybe it
yeah,
wouldn't have been out of necessity, but there was that. And then you see down the line when COVID hit, it actually helped because we put in a lot more effort to bring it up. And because of dumb luck or sheer luck or the universe responding to you, you got to see fruits out of it comparatively. Like if you didn't and you happened to just clear it at your first go. And I also bring up this point that you still had a backlog in your last semester or your second last semester, and it didn't you couldn't go sit for your placements while you were seeing everyone else getting placed, which kind of forced you to look outside from the system of getting placements through colleges, which is a 9 to 5 job. And I think
Hmm.
for you especially, it helped because in the next phase of your journey, you started uh, applying to different places and a lot of cold emails and a lot of
Yeah,
putting yourself out there and seeing how the world would react to that. And so that's when you got your internship at IISc. And
yeah, that's
if you could
exactly.
touch upon the whole process of after placements, I know you were bringing it up, but I just wanted to, uh,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
yeah,
So yeah, so continuing where about where it was my second last semester, and that's where everybody was getting placed. And in my last semester, you basically don't do anything, like it's just project. And it was a very like chill semester because all my friends, everybody's placed, and by that time the placement season is also over. So I was during my graduation, when I was walking to take my degree, I was not, I didn't know what I was going to do next. Like it was completely blank. Like I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do next? This is like, I was really scared. But like you said, it forced this setback or failure forced me to, look outside. Yeah, I like broadened my perspective about, not thinking and looking at the things only between the four walls of just the college campus or on-campus placements. So yeah, like you said, I did a lot of cold emails and not only at IISc, like I emailed to a lot of bunch of other companies too, like proper companies working in the environmental space. And one crazy thing that before I touch upon IISc, I'd like to say that just back in 11th grade, I think IISc open has this open day. So where, they let students from all over like Bangalore or in India come and see the work that they're all doing there. Like it's an open research, like science exhibition kind of thing. And I'd gone to IISc when I was when I was in 11th, I think I was 17 years old or 16 or 17 years old. And I went to this center called the Devecha Center for Climate Change, and I was looking at all the research that we're doing. Then they were doing some really cool research on, like global warming, climate change, like looking at these different climate models. And they hosted this quiz, on the basics of climate change. And I actually took part in that quiz, and I actually won a mug. So, and like a pen, and I was like really happy that, oh, I know so much about climate change. And ironically, what's funny is that I started applying to that center 6 years ahead after I graduated. And I actually started, cold emailing all of the professors there and, started using, and not only that center, but every other different center. And to my luck, two professors, I think, both of them caught my email, saw my resume, and they saw how determined I was. And they were like, come to the campus and, for like an informal interview. And actually, during COVID, I used that opportunity to upskill myself. So I took like 14 different Python courses. It's like five specializations and like three other sustainability related courses. So when they saw this in my resume, they asked me in my interview how what are these courses? And actually, one of the professors was working with one of the professors in, I think it was at University of Chicago. There's this global warming model climate course that I was taking, and he knew that professor personally. And so I took his course, so I knew a lot of those things. So he was really impressed about that. So looking back, you can see how each and every dot is connecting. Like right from when I was like 17 years old, I went to the Devecha Center for Climate Change for just as an open day. And then fast forward 6 years later, there's a professor that's interviewing me, and I told him about all these experiences in the interview too. I told him when I was like 17, I'd come here, and I always dreamt of working here. And they both were like really impressed. And I actually ended up getting that job as a project associate, which is really cool.
yeah. So, I mean, you start working at IISc, and this
Yeah,
is the time where everyone around you is kind of working the 9 to 5 job, the hardcore
yeah.
corporate culture, and you're in this informal environment which, in
Hmm.
my opinion, allowed you to grow more beyond four walls that constrict everyone, which is the 9 to 5 or the corporate. And I'm not saying one size fits all, but for you at least, it helped. And you got exposure to the field you were interested in, and eventually it also helped you in your applications for your masters, and that's how you got into Penn. And you use the same
Mhm.
method of cold mailing people uh, to different professors because you weren't just looking at a master's, you were looking at something in the research field and something with PhD options and different types of options. You were just open to anything in your passion space and you weren't like limiting yourself to one way. And I felt
Mhm.
that you did the same with getting the position at IISc. Before we touch
Yeah.
points on what exactly you did in IISc and how it helped you, especially the environmental part, I just want to take the a little bit of your time to like talk about coal mailing and I because I think it really worked for you and I think a lot of
Mhm.
people haven't one, they're afraid, or two, they're just lazy to do it because they're most of these cold meals you can do it in the formal method of just approaching someone through their LinkedIn link, which says you can apply here, and then they just apply. But then they're 1 in 1,000. But when you mail someone, you're 1 in 100. So I feel like if you start filtering yourself and putting yourself out there, even when someone doesn't want to see you, and then they're like, okay, this point actually interested me. So, what was your approach and why did you start cold mailing people?
So, it's all about, when I started looking at, the subject that I didn't clear, which became a backlog, I had this fear of failure, which I thought that I should overcome. And that's one of my main motivations for, starting to cold email people. I was like, what's the worst thing that can happen? They'll either say no or they won't respond. And what I thought while I was cold emailing these people is that how do I make this email genuine? Like my email will be like in the dozens of, like there'll be so many other emails around this. So what can I do to catch their eye? And during that time, there was no chat GPT to write your emails for you. And it was all like written by yourself. Like I wrote every line of my email. And like I told you about the story of, how I visited the Devecha Center for Climate Change and how I saw all of these projects that were happening there. I actually wrote all of that in my cold email to all those professors there. And I said that I've always been passionate about sustainability and I've taken all of these courses. And even at RV, I did all of these things. And I was very honest even while they took my interview, saying that I might be open to doing my master's after I, get some work experience here. So I feel that honesty and authenticity go a long way. And I think that really, stands you out from the crowd. Like if you just say a cold email saying that, oh, I'm really interested in this work that you're doing, and I'm very passionate to join your organization. That's not standing you out. It's always better to, have some sort of personal story and personal anecdote that you can include in these. And with the era of Chat GPT, it's even worse now because, even when you're cold emailing people, you have this AI generated content that is not at all genuine. It is very general and, it doesn't, make sense. Like, yeah, there'll be a lot of fancy words, but it doesn't sound authentic. So I feel that being authentic is one of the core, uh, values to making a successful cold email, like getting a reply back from these cold emails and also overcoming the fear of failure and that insecurity of, oh, like what will this person think of me? I shouldn't sound so desperate, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And then you start this position at IISc, and I just wanted you got a few travel opportunities. So, what exactly were you doing in IISc? If you can like elaborate on it a bit.
Yeah, I'd like to. So my professor, one of them did his PhD in Princeton, and he was working in the energy space. So I didn't have any like fixed mindset while I joined them saying that, oh, I want to work in this space, I want to do this, or I wanted to do that. I just said that, okay, I want to help, the environment. I want to do something to like combat global warming and climate change. And that's when my professor looked at the resume, and he's like, "Oh, you know Python, so I actually need someone that who knows Python to have this library which is coming up in the energy space." And I actually started learning that library. The first few weeks was really hard because I was trying to acquaint myself to learning new things, and that's one more thing that you should always be open to, like never stop learning, because when you realize that you have learned so much, there's still like so much left. And so one of the main reasons to that I got this IISc like this job experience is because of COVID, how it helped me to reflect back on all these things. And not only like doing these courses, but I set up a morning routine. I read a lot of books, and luckily, I think one of the books that you actually lent me, I think it was Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey, that opened a lot of you know perspectives, and it had this thing that there's this one quote that still actually catches my eye. He said that a roof is a man-made thing, and which was like really deep as to how we have these perspectives, and we like are very fixated on this, and this we create this roof over our heads and try to be in that comfort zone. So I think the COVID era really helped me to look inward and actually helped me flourish a lot. And and thank you so much for lending me that book. And I've still taken photos of so many pages, and I keep reading them when I'm down. And that book was amazing. So yeah, coming back to my work at IISc, I did some energy modeling. Basically, I was my professor and I, we visited the Karnataka State Load Dispatch Center. So they were having few issues with forecasting their wind and solar. So I got to see like how actually the government works. It is very bureaucratic, and there's a lot of things that just don't seem to add up. When you look at these things, like, oh, we can solve this problem, but there are so many like bottlenecks in the process. So what I did was I built a optimization model. Basically, it told me at which hour which plant should be dispatched, and this took me almost 9 months to develop. And the most tedious part was collecting data. It was the part that I hated the most, and I felt like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just collecting data here, and I thought I'm making an impact. But those steps were actually essential for me to actually build the model, and I had a strong foundation in Python. And most people, like computer science engineers and all of that, those people, they do have a very strong technical background, but they focus only on like software engineering, app development, or any of these things. But actually having a programming language skill can like expose you to so many different things. So I would say everybody should learn a program, should know how to code, even like whether it's art students or commerce students. I think it's a very important skill. It basically helping you to understand, like, and especially with the or advent of ChatGPT now, who can code for you, it's always better to understand the coding language that they have. So coming back to at IISc, I built a dispatch model for the Karnataka state, and basically how do we decarbonize the grid. So if we say that, okay, we want to put so many gigawatts or megawatts of solar in the grid, how will the grid behave? So I built a model on that way, if that makes sense.
Okay. So then you start applying for your master's program, and you're looking
Not then,
at,
I was parallelly doing it. I was parallelly doing it while I was
yeah,
working on
while
it.
you're working at IISc.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
for those who don't know, in IISc is Indian Institute of Science. It's India's leading research college, university, and they work a lot with the government on many projects and initiatives. But so you wanted to go abroad for your master's, and you wanted to pursue environmental sciences, right? So you you started applying and cold mailing professors, and I think there was one professor in Michigan who had approached you and said, "Hey Shrey, I'm really interested in working with you. Why don't you apply for our PhD program instead of our master's program, and we'll see how it works so that we can work together." And so that all adds up because of the experience you've had at IISc and the work you did there. And then you get into Penn. So how was that story and what did it play in your life? Like,
Yeah, so actually, before we get into the pen part, I'd like to walk you through my application process because I feel that is a very important part while students are doing all of these things. So, just for us, luckily, that time GRE was waived off. And to be honest with you, I did not perform very well in my GRE. My score was in the low 300s, and I was very disappointed again. I was like, oh my God, I'm not done well in GRE at all. Like, how is this going to happen? But I think right now all universities they have reinstated GRE, so I guess it's important for students to prepare. But I mean, at least I got lucky because of COVID that many universities have waived it off. Second point being that the Michigan professor that emailed me I was actually referring to a lot of his papers, so he was very interested to work with me and do a PhD. But I said to myself that PhD is not a track for me. Like 5 years of doing so much research is definitely I don't see myself doing that. And I realized that only after I worked in IISc when I saw other students doing their PhD, their postdocs, and all of that. And that's when I realized like such a core like research field is not for me. I want more of a professional experience, like in the industry where I can actually make an impact. So I feel that these job experiences, more than teaching you, it also realizes that these are the things that you do not want to do. And so you can narrow down or expand your horizons on something else. So actually, Penn was, my third or fourth backup school, and my dream school was Yale, and that's where I used to put my most of my effort for that application, like the SOP and the professors from there. I emailed so many, and of those professors, I worked on my SOP at least like five or six, seven. I think no, there were 10 drafts of my Yale SOP, and that was my dream school, and that was the one thing that I really worked on. And after I finished Yale, then I worked on all the other applications like Michigan, Penn, Duke, and all of these universities. And I think I got my first admit from Michigan, and then my second admit from Penn. And I was just waiting for my Yale admit, and as soon as I saw my Yale admit, I mean, Yale decision, they told me that I was rejected. And I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do again? It was all over that same feeling where, I failed that one subject. I was like, I didn't get into my dream school, but I do have these backup options. I did get waitlisted by Duke, but Duke was actually my second school, and then it was Penn. But then I was like, okay, let me see. I started, Googling about Penn. I started speaking to the professor who took my interview. He connected me to a senior. She was working the water space, and she was really nice. And I feel that talking to the current students in that program is a very important process because they will tell you exactly how the program is. And she gave me a great overview. So that's when I got interested. And then I accepted my decision to Penn. And just, I think, 3 days later, I get an email from Duke saying that I've been accepted and I also got a scholarship there. So I was like, oh my God. I was like, am I making the right decision? I mean, I could say no to Penn, but I already committed to them. And I'm the kind of person that always, when I make a commitment, I like to stick by it. And I do not like to go back on my words. And that's just who I am. So I know I did think that, okay, this might, not be so advantageous to me. I got a scholarship in Duke. I think I should go there. But when I was weighing all the pros and cons, like seeing the rankings and all the different things that Penn had to offer, I felt that Penn had a more of a holistic approach, a very, I could take school courses from the Wharton School of Business, from engineering, and all of those things. I will get into all of that deeper in our conversation as we spoke. But yeah, that was my process of the applications part, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Even with the scholarship, it's not the regular mentality to let a scholarship go and go for another
Yeah,
college.
and I'd like
Uh,
to add that I'm blessed that my hardworking parents can afford so much, so I could make this decision of coming to Penn. So I think it is notable to acknowledge that my parents are so hardworking that I can afford to go to these colleges.
yeah. Um, Now moving on to your master's program in Penn, and so
Hmm.
now you're leaving India, and
Yeah.
India is also losing out one of an environmental scientist, and I'm pretty sure there's very few of you. But so you're leaving home, and you're a person who's very close to home, and home is important to you. So,
Hmm.
how was that feeling of leaving home?
Yeah, it was definitely hard because I've lived in Bangalore my whole life, and I'd gotten like really close with my grandparents. I'd got a dog also, a golden retriever puppy, Glenn, which whom I was really close to. So it was definitely very hard because during COVID too, we became a lot more like closer because we were always together all the time. We were playing. I used to play board games with my grandparents, and I used to talk to my dad, like go to the office, and my mom and my sister. So it was definitely a very uh that like a very big shift, big and a sudden shift. So um I think uh that it when I look back, like I cried on the day when I left. Like it was so bad. Even on the plane, I had this one moment of regret. I mean, not regret, but I was like, oh my God, I think I should just, go cancel my ticket or just get off, at my layover place and go back to India. What am I doing with my life? So, but it was definitely interesting as to seeing all of these stream of emotions at the same time, and I was very anxious, but luckily I have my aunt that lives here in New Jersey, which is near to Philadelphia, so she was there to pick me up at the airport. So it did definitely help having family here in the US.
Okay, so from what I'm getting, home was your comfort place, and I'm going to take it from that sense that get out of your comfort place so you learn much more, and then learn something and then bring it back to your roots. We'll touch upon that
Yeah.
later. Um, so now you're in Penn, and how was that? How was the feeling of being a foreign student in a new country, doing a completely different course? So there's no experience that you can learn from say like other seniors or people you've been in touch with. And also we'll touch upon Wharton and what they had to offer you and the exposure and the experiences you had as a student over there in general.
Okay, so I'll just start with my first few weeks at Penn. It was a bit overwhelming. So whenever you come to like an Ivy League university or any sort of university, there are a lot of smart students around you. So you just have this imposter syndrome, like, do I really deserve to be here? And that hit me hard for the first 2 weeks. But then the American mindset of the professors here and all, they recognize this very well, and they always like offer a source of support. They take mental health and all of these things very seriously. So they were like a very good pillar of support, like my advisors and all the people around me. They were always there for me, and they have these different resources for graduate students. Like We had these career fairs, we had these clubs, like different clubs to get to know people, like these different campus stores and all of these different experiences, which actually were very like essential for me to build myself to where I am right now. And I did take a very proactive approach. Just on the second week of coming here, I met that senior who I spoke to on call. I went to her place and she told me one thing, that just this environmental sciences degree in itself is going to be worthless. Trust me, Shrey, you need to make like maximum resources at Penn. You're in an Ivy League university, and Penn has like the world's best like alumni. Like if I can name the alumni of Penn, it's Elon Musk, Warren Buffett. There's so many, John Legend, the Donald Trump, and there's just the list just keeps going on. And just the alumni network of Penn is crazy, and the money that all of the different Penn fellowships that Penn offers, you just need to come into this degree with an opportunistic mindset. And if you come with that mindset, you will thrive. Otherwise, these 2 years are just going to fly by and you won't know how. And she's seen her peers do it. So that's why she was like warning me and giving me like a stern warning, which really woke me up, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So, like for anyone, even if you go to a college, you have to use the college as a whole instead of just the degree. And I think you
Yeah,
used it very well because Penn
yeah,
is affiliated and in cohorts with Wharton, and you managed to get yourself into a lot of Wharton classes with like one of the best business minds in the world, if not the country. And you got to
yeah.
study with their students, be in clubs with them, and interact with them. Even though you went for an environmental science, you were looking at your overall development, and it's integral for anyone to even learn about business, marketing, and all the assets that come with anything. And I think Wharton helped with that. And so, if you can touch upon what you did with Wharton, how did you work with Wharton? What did Penn offer that you could do this?
Mhm. So that's one of the main reasons why I chose Penn, was like the access to the Wharton School. And any degree in Penn you do, whether it's environmental sciences or any other domain as well, it's a very flexible degree. They here in US, it's not like, okay, you're doing chemical engineering or mechanical engineering, you take only subjects that are focused on that. It's a very holistic approach. And I'm not saying all universities follow this. Penn is one of the few universities that have this kind of approach, where it is a very flexible thing where you can study whatever you want, like literally whatever you want. There's a professor that's teaching it, and you're allowed to take that course. And you, even if it doesn't count towards your degree, you can go and sit in that class, you can audit it. I've done that, and it was just amazing. So as soon as I came here in Penn, my first class was actually a Wharton class. It was on environmental sustainability and value creation. Basically, how do you start an environmental business and create value with people around you? And he was a Wharton professor, I think, and he was very dynamic. Like, he was actually a VC. He works for as a VC in one of the tech startups. Like he sources for technology, and he has like so much work experience, like 30 years of work experience in that space. And he was so dynamic. And just one that class, I got to see where to even like there was participation grading. So basically you need to participate in class so that you can get a good grade. So you're basically forced to talk to people, and there were so many people around me. I think I was the youngest person in that class. All the Wharton people are like have 5, 6, sometimes 7 years of work experience, and they're in their late 20s or early 30s. So it was very intimidating being around them, but it really helped me grow because I had a lot of skill sets that I could talk about what I did at IISc and all of these different things that people were interested in talking about. And like the professor itself, we used to have guest lecturers every alternative class, and my professors used to take us out on lunches. Like he would pay for everything into like these really fancy restaurants with these guest lecturers. And then the one which I had, I was sitting right next to the Walmart director of ESG, and she was like a really big person, and she was a Penn alum as well. And just being in the same room with such brilliant minds, your mind mindset completely shifts. So it was a great experience that this Wharton had given me. And this is not just the one class that I took. I took multiple classes. One of the other class was thinking with models, and that professor I still work with. I'm doing my thesis and project with him. He gave me a different approach, and later I'll be telling you how his class helped me get the IEA fellowship too. So the next semester in the spring, I took this class in negotiations, and the professor from there, he's settled lawsuits worth millions of dollars, and he's like a professional negotiator. So he taught us negotiation, and each class was there was no studying. Every class you're paired up with a different Wharton person and you negotiate with them. Sometimes it's a group negotiation, sometimes it's like a arbitration case, like a real lawyers coming. We were given real lawyers to consult with who were like professional lawyers. So it was crazy, and that course developed my soft skills so much that my professor, so during his office hours, he used to he told us that he would help us with any real life negotiation. So when when I had to negotiate my rent with my landlord for the next year to renew my lease, I took his help. And usually you would hear that the next year the rents increase. But using my negotiation skills from this class, I negotiated a lower rent than what I was paying last year, which is just crazy. Like just you can see directly how real this class like was affecting this thing, and these things only um, I could learn from the Wharton School of Business. I took part in the Wharton Energy and Climate Club too. We had like different, we went to New York City and looked at all these different JP Morgan power and renewables teams, spoke to their directors and experts. We had coffee chats with them. So I used Wharton as an amazing resource, and um, I tried to make the maximum use of all of these different things that I could.
Yeah. So, now you're at Penn, you're at Wharton, and as any foreign student in a foreign country with the visa requirements, to start looking for internships and jobs, prospects for you to stay on in the country, and also necessary for your growth and learning. And
Hmm.
if I'm not wrong, the situation wasn't that good in the job market. And how did you get ahead in that? How were you able to land this job at IEA? And we'll touch about IEA a little bit later. Um, what what does someone have to do to stand out in like a sea of people who are trying to just get ahead in life?
So my first thing, like I said, is about being authentic and genuine and helping others. So there's this another book that I read called The Last Lecture, and in that the author speaks about, like lifting people up even when you are climbing a mountain. And that's the same approach that I followed. I used to help a lot of my friends. I used to give them these different resources and they would help me back. And I'm still doing that right now with all the juniors like you. They come and ask me, "Oh, Shrey, how did you get this IEA fellowship?" Like just today, I spoke to one junior. Last week, I spoke to two. And and because I'm helping them so much, like I gave them all the resources that I did, like whatever the things that I did first year and whatever the things I wish I did and that I regret that I did, I gave them a list of all of these resources, and now they are helping me like with so many different things happening around that pen that I didn't know. So it's always about lifting others and being genuine and, showcasing that to the people around you, and telling, and that's what I spoke about, during my interview also at the IEA, like what are all these different things that I did at Penn and how I'm helping people around me, and that's what caught their eye as well. Apart from the technical skills, I think these are the soft skills of, helping your peers around you and lifting them up. Like it's like when you're climbing a mountain, you're not doing it alone. You hold their hands and climb together, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Mm.
So, let's talk about IEA now. What
Yeah,
is the
sure.
IEA? What is this fellowship? What
Okay.
what did it require you to do to get it? And what does the IEA do for the environment? What do they run? What is their setup like? And yeah,
Okay. So first of all, the IEA is in full form the International Energy Agency. So it's basically the United Nations of the energy space. Like a lot of countries become their members. It's primarily the OECD countries, which is most of the Western countries, like Europe, US, Canada, Australia, and those kind of developed countries. But now they're including a lot of developing countries too. And so basically, what they do is they have these reports that many companies around the world use as a blueprint for, doing their business practices. Many countries use these reports to draft their energy policies and all of that. It's like one of all the world's experts in the energy space come and work in Paris to at this place, and their headquarters is actually in Paris. And this fellowship that I got, so University of Pennsylvania and IEA have this partnership that every year they send just one student as a fellow to for the summer as like a summer internship, and it's a very competitive fellowship. It's reserved for graduate students only. A lot of undergrads actually came and asked me like, "Oh, Shrey, how do you get this fellowship?" I was like, sorry, it's just for grad students. Like 10 offers it only for grad students, and they were like really disappointed. But like again, I see a lot of my peers have that mindset of, like talking only, oh, I'm a grad student, I shouldn't talk to the undergrads, like they're kids. But I didn't have that mindset. I took classes with undergrads, and I think I never saw them as, like, oh, they're kids. I looked at them as my equals, and I got to learn so much from them. And Penn especially, their undergrad programs are so rigorous and so hard to get into. The acceptance rate for undergrad programs in Penn is like 5-6%, and few of the programs like MNT, which is management and technology, where they take courses from Wharton, and they take courses from the computer science department. Their acceptance rate is 1 or 2%. So I got to I'm taking actually a class called product design from them right now, and there are people from that time. So just talking to these undergrads too, like expanded my horizons. And coming back to the topic of IEA, uh, so yeah, they were headquartered at Paris, and I got this fellowship through the Climate Center here, which is called the for Energy Policy, and I get paid from both Penn and the IEA to actually pays, and it was a perfect opportunity for me, like spending my summer in Paris. And it was like a very long process. I'd like to say that because I started applying last year in October. The applications went on till December. I got my first interview in Jan, my second interview in Feb with the people at IEA. It was a very technical interview. But when I told them in that interview that, oh, I did all these interesting things at Penn, and I looked at my resume, and so here at Penn we have a different career center that actually prepares you for these interviews and helps you ask these different questions. So I used the maximum amount of resources that Penn had offered, like including the career center just before my interview. I had like 3-4 mock interviews with them. They helped me, like reviewing my resume, and then, talking to and having these mock interviews. Actually, the director of the career center actually, took my mock interview for me and prepared me for it. So I just had, so all of these resources that universities provide here actually help you become confident. And that's with that same mindset, I went to the interview that I took, and I performed really well, and they were very happy with my chemical engineering background as well. My boss, he loves hiring like engineers. So again, when you connect the dots, my chemical engineering background did help. So you can see that all of these dots that are, connecting together, and he was very happy with my performance, and it just worked out perfectly. And I got to know that I was selected in March end, and I applied for my visa in April, and I left in May. So can you see what a long process this was, right? From October when I applied up until May, every month there was something that I had to do. So all of these steps, you have to be very persistent and resilient. I was doing all this while I was managing my course load. So it was a long process, but it was definitely worth it.
And what did you do at the IEA?
Okay, yeah. So the first few days was just figuring about what projects that I did. I mean, what projects to do, because I had expertise in the Indian electricity sector, so they wanted me to, do some modeling for them. Then they had this mid-year report that comes out, so they wanted me to write a few pages. They were very happy with my writing skills and communication skills, so I started writing a report for them. Basically, I was tracking heat waves all around the world and how extreme climate events are, posing a threat to the electricity system. So I wrote like a few pages on that, and how, global warming is increasing the cooling needs of different countries. And the second thing that I actually wanted to do is, every year, usually all these countries, I mean, these reports, they paint a very bad picture about India. Oh, India is polluting so much. India is a developing country, but things are changing now. And I wanted to, change that narrative about India. And IEA is trying to make India a member country. Actually, Narendra Modi met with our director in February and committed that India is going to become a member country as well. So at IEA, I got to, meet with the experts of the gas sector in India, and, all the senior leaders, like indirectly, as my boss was talking to them. I got to see how these organizations work. So I did a excerpt in the article on IEA where I looked at India's electricity demand and how India is being able to meet it consistently. The past few years, we are having less power cuts than usual because of how India's electricity infrastructure is improving. So I identified these trend in the past few years, and I actually did some nice graphs on Python, and I showed them, and I wrote about it. And yeah, that got published, and I didn't expect to be a main author for the report, but my boss and all of these people were really nice. And I just thought I'll be one of the contributors, but when I saw my name as the main author, I was like really shocked. I was like, oh my God, this is perfect.
Yeah, and I'd also like to touch upon this point. Now you're in a foreign country, and usually when students or anyone leaves from their home country to any foreign country, they tend to
Hmm.
stick with their tribe, for lack of
Yeah.
better words. And when you're, for example, an Indian in America or an Indian in Paris, you're going to find Indians, and you're going because that's your home, that's your comfort, and you want to interact with them. So this is you stepping out of your comfort space again and meeting people from all walks of life, from different countries, different backgrounds, different ages, different exposure, experiences. Why do you think you did that? And why is it important for anyone to just look outside from home to get a rounded experience?
So I had that mentality of seeking discomfort, and I didn't expect this, but when I landed in Paris, and thanks to you, I got lucky with the Paris housing as well, because you introduced me to your friend Marisha, and she sublet her place to me. So thank you so much for that. It made my Paris housing situation much easier than a lot of my other
And
people
we'll
because
talk
it's
about
very
the housing situation also, but yeah, continue.
yeah. So I said yeah. Once I moved in, it was definitely a new atmosphere for me because I was living in a very French area where everybody was locals. There was very few students, and when I used to be in the metro or wherever I went, there were absolutely no Indians or maybe like very few. And this was not what I'm used to because even here in the US, wherever you go, there will be Indians. Like there are Indians all around me here too in university. So in France, it was completely different, and me not knowing French, that was also another challenge for me. Luckily, people in Paris do speak English, so it was easier, but nobody can hold a conversation in English. So it was really hard for me to, not make, I couldn't make friends outside of work because, and I really regretted that, oh, I should have learned French before I came. But I tried to be resilient and I spoke to all the people that I could. I went out to these different, after work parties or, where there were people from all over around the world who speak English but do not know French. I tried to become friends with them. And definitely I did go out with my work friends. Like the best part that I've actually really enjoyed is, meeting people from all over the world and getting that global perspective because every person in my team was from a different country. One was from Australia, Hungary, Germany, Spain, Netherlands, Turkey. So each person came with their own set of perspectives. And that this is exactly what I wanted when I left India, like getting a global perspective of these different things and just talking to them and becoming friends with them. I became really good friends with the Australian guy. I became really good friends with the Germany guy too. And now whenever I visit these countries, I actually have a place to crash in, and they will show me around. And that was just that was just really nice to to talk to them and having this global perspective. So I think that was one of the main things that prompted me to get out of my comfort zone and have this perspective.
Now let's talk about a little bit about culture. Um,
Okay.
so India is different, Paris is different, London is different, and the US is different, and you were in Philadelphia. So, what is the what unites all these places and what separates them? Like, what were the cultural similarities and the cultural differences?
So cultural similarities actually were very, I mean, it's different. Like everybody in France are really nice as long as you're nice to them. Like you have to start your conversation with bonjour, otherwise it is considered very mean. And everyone is like really well dressed in France, which was a huge shock for me. Like in back in the US, I used to go out in my shorts or joggers to go to get groceries, but in France, I did that once and I got looks from everyone. So then I had to, like be in my jeans and everybody was so well dressed. And when I was walking by the first day and I was looking at all the people, I was so intimidated because they were all so well dressed and carried themselves in such a different way, which I was not used to seeing in India or in the US for that sake. And it was a very eye-opening or a different experience, and I think it has personally changed me permanently, I guess, because now whenever I step out, I actively make an effort to look good before coming to France. That was not the case. I just, used to just put on whatever I could and I used to just get out. So I think that was a very big cultural shock for me. Back in US, I think there was not much of a cultural shock because growing up, I've seen a lot of US television shows and movies. So I knew what I was I mean, I could easily, talk to the people, and I knew what was to be expected from Americans. But coming to France was a completely different cultural shock for me. And even like talking to the French people and the best part was the food. Oh my God, eating croissants in the morning, and the coffee was different. The wine was different. Oh my God. I was a beer person, but after coming to France, I became a wine person just because of how amazing and cheap the wine is. And these small things, actually added up and made my experience much better. But I did suffer from a lot of homesickness because I did feel like a foreigner in their land because of not knowing the language and not having friends outside work. It used to be a bit hard, but few things that I really enjoyed was that for people under 26 in France, I was considered a French resident because I was working. So I get free access to all their museums and parks. So I visited all of the museums that I could and all of the gardens, which was like really beautiful.
And I remember you mentioning this, that it's different experiencing a country as a professional and as a tourist.
Yeah.
So, what are those differences, and how are you, like, for example, let's take France, and how are you able to get the back door entrances rather than the front door entrances, and how did that alleviate your experience?
Yeah, so at work, I did become friends with a few locals who did know how to speak English and were fluent in French too. Like they lived their life in Paris, so they gave me a very local flavor of the city. So I can say they told me, like just for example, going to the Louvre, like they told me that most of the tourists go to the front entrance, but there's this back entrance which doesn't have a line. And I went and saw I used that entrance and then I saw the Mona Lisa in like 15 minutes. On the contrary, people wait for hours to see it. And it was a bit underwhelming seeing Mona Lisa because it was like really small. But there were a lot of different works of art in the Louvre that were like really beautiful. And I went to these different places called the catacombs where you can see the bones of all the different uh, uh, the old city, and it was just it's like it was I can't even explain how um I don't even have words to say how like different that entire experience was, like being around so many like bones of real people. You get this appreciation for life, and you get to know the fragility of life and seeing death in a completely different perspective. So looking at these small experiences, they added up and made my experience in France amazing. And I think uh, I told you, right? I went during the Olympics too. So the Olympics experience was completely different. Like I'll just give you an example of the opening ceremony. During the opening ceremony, I was talking about uh, how different people of the country coming together. They were cheering for me, and when I took the Indian flag and went, and I was the only one of the few Indians around, but people from Italy, Spain, and US, they all started cheering when the India boat came for the opening ceremony. So that's when I truly felt united, that like we're all part of the same world, and it was very heartwarming that moment. And I got to see the US basketball team play, like Stephen Curry, KD, LeBron, and all of them just playing together in one thing. It was just surreal. And then I supported Team India too. I went for a hockey game and India won. And then I went for even the badminton game and actually met PV Sindhu too. So it was definitely I went at the right time and I got this amazing experience, which I'm very grateful for.
Okay, now let's circle back to environmental science, and for people who want to get into that field, I mean,
Hmm.
they're already passionate about it to choose it, because I'm not sure if it's a very pushed field that people are being pushed into it. It's more out of passion and want to do it. So
Hmm.
what would you tell someone who is like in college now, undergrad, or in school, or even like looking for a master's? What are the things they should look out for? What are the experiences they should try to get at home and even from a college that they may get into, and after being in a college from their workspaces?
So I definitely say the first thing is get some work experience. Never come to grad school right after you finish your undergrad. I mean, I see a lot of people do that. There's nothing wrong in that, but I feel that having work experience gives you a different perspective and gives you an edge over all the other people. And here, people loved hearing about your work experience. One of the main reasons why I got the IEA internship was because of my work experience at IISc. So that's the first thing that I'd like to say. And second is do not like limit yourself and are trying to aim only for the big companies like the big four or any of the big software companies or wherever you want to work. Try to get meaningful roles even at small startups or those kind of places where you can actually make an impact and learn something rather than you being instructed to do the same old monotonous work every day. You won't be learning something new. I mean, it will look good, really good on your resume, but look for places where you can make an actual impact. And like my internship, my work job at IISc, I was actually making an impact, and that really helped me. And the third thing is when you do end up coming here for your masters, come with that opportunistic mindset that because here the universities have a lots of have a completely different focus compared to Indian universities. So try to make use of the resources. What I see most students making the mistake is, oh, it's US, they get that independence, they come, they party and do all of these things. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You should enjoy too. I enjoy too. I go to a lot of parties and have fun too. But when you're in college, come with that opportunistic mindset, like make use of all these different resources. A lot of Penn students themselves don't know that they get free access to the New York Times or the Wall Street Journal as a Penn student. Like not many people know. And these universities will not come and tell you, oh, we offer these things. You have to actively seek these opportunities out and maintain that opportunistic mindset throughout because a master's program is usually 1 or 2 years, one in the UK and two here. So you need to come with that mindset as soon as you're here, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So one last point before we get off. What what's in store for Shrey for the future?
Yeah, so I'm graduating next year, and there's a lot of pressure too for me to come back to India. But what I've realized working at IE is I do not want to work in an international organization. I mean, it was fun working. The French work culture was nice. 2 hours of lunch break, 1 hour of coffee break. It was a good work culture. I would say it was not too intense, but I want to again. I felt like the culture was bureaucratic, so I want to do again. Work in a place where I can make an impact. So currently, I'm looking for working in some clean tech or energy startups, and I do not want to stay in the US. I'm Indian by heart, and I actually want to work in India and have an impact over there. So I want to take all the knowledge that I can and build from here and implement it in India. So I'm looking at working for a startup here and, implement few of those things and take it to India and carry it forward there, if that makes sense. But I'm
Yeah.
not sure about this. I don't know what I'm going to do next year, but this is what I have in my mind right now.
Well, thank you for coming on Colors of Humans Against the Current. And if anybody has any doubts, they can reach out to you directly or reach out to us and we'll get in touch with you. Um,
Yes, definitely. You can connect with me on LinkedIn too. I'm happy to connect with anybody. And if they have any doubts, I answer a lot of people's questions on LinkedIn. So happy to connect.
Thanks, Ray.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Jacob. All the best.
Bye.
Bye.